because it acts to increase the contractility of the heart and also increase the heart rate, resulting in tachycardia. And beta 2 is all of these and more. It causes vasodilation and bronchodilation and reduced GI motility. I want to bring your attention to something that's really important. The bronchi, which is the airways, they do have adrenergic receptors, but they are not innervated by sympathetic nerve, by the sympathetic nervous system. So we have asthma inhalers that act on beta adrenergic receptors within the bronchi, but normally the sympathetic nerves do not innervate the bronchi. And we're going to talk about the general organization of the autonomic nervous system. So we have a sensory afferent that's part of the peripheral nervous system. It sends a signal to the central nervous system, which provides an output, which then goes on to motor efferents. Right. So autonomic nervous system is split into sympathetic and parasympathetic. So it's important to know that visceral sensory afferents is not part of the autonomic nervous system, because the autonomic nervous system is really just the motor aspect of it. So are visceral afferents part of autonomic? They are not. This is a very confusing part that I think hasn't been covered really well, so I'm going to be talking about it. This is the central autonomic network, which is really just a higher order processing of visceral stimulus within the body. Okay, so at the very bottom, we have the spinal cord, which sends signals up into the brainstem. The brainstem is really important, especially the reticular formation, because it exerts the most direct effect over autonomic functions, right? The brainstem is split into the medulla, which is all the way at the bottom, the pons, which is in the middle, and the midbrain, which is all the way at the top, which connects to the main brain thing. So the medulla is important for vital functions such as breathing, heart rate, vasomotor centers, known as the ventrolateral medulla. This seems to be quite important. Monash tends to like to talk about this one. The rostral VRM is the major sympathetic outflow, and the caudal inhibits the rostral. And we have the pons, which is needed for motor control of the eye, the face, and hearing, and the midbrain is for consciousness and for sleep. And then we move upwards into the hypothalamus. It's over here, this one. So this is the main integration center of the autonomic nervous system. It is not the most direct. Okay, the most direct would be the brainstem reticular formation. Hypothalamus is really just where it receives input and it gives output throughout the central nervous system. So it receives visceral afferents from organs. Okay, it receives input from circumventricular organs within the brain that detects glucose and hormone levels. It also has its intrinsic sensory functions. It senses temperature, osmolality, glucose, sodium, all of these important blood chemistry parameters. And also it receives input from higher centers such as the cerebral cortex and the limbic system, which is required for emotions and memory. And then, so we're going to talk about the higher centers. The cerebral cortex is important for storing recalling a traumatic event. So to briefly link all of these up, for example, you see something that you don't like, you have PTSD, for example, you experience a traumatic experience, and this triggers, so the cerebral cortex recalls a traumatic event, okay? This triggers an emotional response within the limbic system, okay? And so the limbic system sends signals to the hypothalamus to activate fight and flight responses. So when you see a teacher that you don't like, your heart starts to race, and you start sweating and you look like a nervous wreck. And all of this is really just because the autonomic nervous system is very intimately tied to the upper parts of the brain, the cerebral cortex and the limbic system, to retrieve memories. This is not important. Right, so we're basically done with all of the lectures. I'm just going to be going through some of the past year questions and also some questions that I've set myself. So for question 1, I'm just going to give you guys a minute to try it out. Okay, so for question 1, the answer would be A. Action potentials propagate along the plasma membrane before entering the T tubules. So this is true because of what I just talked about previously. But I'm going to talk about why the rest are wrong. So B is wrong because calcium, it binds to troponin, which shifts the tropomyosin to expose binding sites on the actin filaments. So it's wrong that it doesn't really bind to tropomyosin. C is wrong because at rest, myosin heads, the myosin head has ADP and PI bound to it. So it's not true that there's nothing bound to it. D is wrong because calcium ions leave the SR via ryanodine receptor calcium channels, not the DHP. The DHP is a receptor along the T tubule that senses the wave of depolarization. For question 2.
Wait, William, I have a question. When it says at rest, what does it mean? Does it mean like haven't power stroke yet or detached from the actin?
I believe this question refers to wait, sorry, let me think about it. I think it's referring to right after the myosin head has cleaved the ATP into ADP and PI, but it hasn't really initiated the power stroke because calcium hasn't really entered the muscles yet. And as a result, there is no muscle contraction. So it's still kind of at rest. I believe that was the interpretation of the question.
Okay, thanks.
For question 2, the answer is B, because small fibers exert a small amount of force, but it fires at a greater rate, and they're more resistant to fatigue rather than big fibers. So this is just part of the biomechanics of muscle contraction. Question 3, I guess you just have a read. I realize I might be overrunning, so I'll just be spotting some more important questions. Okay, so for 3, the answer is C, because, so I'm going to go through why the rest are wrong. For option A, Meissner's corpuscles are found only in smooth skin, so not hairy skin. B is wrong because Merkel's receptors are involved in light touch and not sensing pressure. And D is wrong because Meissner's receptors are found in the upper dermis and they detect light touch. So none of the mechanoreceptors are found in the epidermis. Yeah. So I think this was a Monash question, and I guess it's important to know the differences of the receptors and where they're located in. Question 4. Okay, the answer is B. For option A is wrong because alpha motor neurons are involved in overall muscle contraction. Rather, gamma motor neurons are involved in the contraction of muscle spindles, the intrafusal fibers, not the muscles itself. C is wrong because Golgi tendon organ has sensory innervation only to detect stretch. The motor fibers go to the muscles instead. And for D, muscle contraction of the extrafusal fibers, it causes muscle spindles to become slack rather than tighten. As a result, there's reflex tightening via gamma motor neurons. I don't think I'll be talking about this one because it's pretty straightforward. Okay, sorry, I'll just say it. So for 5, the answer is B, and for 6, the answer is A. For 7, this is more of the basal ganglia. So which of the below interactions occur when you attempt to initiate movement? The answer is B. It's really a memory recall. The thalamus activates a striatum, or known as the putamen. C is wrong because the striatum inhibits the GPI, the globus pallidus internus, and this is part of the direct pathway. The GPI inhibits the thalamus. This is wrong. This is, yeah, just memory recall. For question 8, the answer is D, because the circumventricular organs are not located in the hypothalamus. Rather, they're found in parts of the brain known as the 3rd and the 4th ventricles. So basically, these are just fluid-filled cavities within the brain, not in the hypothalamus. Question 9. So this is just memory recall. The answer is D. For question 10, co-transmitter. This is quite a low yield question, but it's just important to know that it's not important to know, but the answer is A. It's ATP. Nitric oxide is a co-transmitter for the parasympathetic nervous system. Methotrexate is a drug. It's an anti-cancer drug, so it's not a co-transmitter at all. And prostaglandins help to sensitize neurons to pain. It's not a co-transmitter. 11. As mentioned previously, the exception is the bronchial smooth muscles. So the answer is D. The bronchial smooth muscles do have alpha and beta receptors, but they're not intrinsically innervated by the sympathetic nervous system. And for 12, the parasympathetic nervous system, when stimulated, causes bronchoconstriction. The other options, A, B, and D, results in is due to sympathetic nervous system. And importantly, for option D, vasodilation doesn't happen because there is no parasympathetic innervation to the blood vessels at all. The answer for 13 is C. ACH is used in parasympathetic nervous system. And when you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, you're increasing GI motility. So when you inhibit it, it causes constipation. Question 14, the answer is B. Alpha adrenal receptors, importantly, cause mydriasis, which is pupillary dilation. And the receptors that are present, that's involved, is the alpha-1 receptor. Okay. Causes bronchodilation and a fall. Okay, so question 15, the answer is beta 2. So both beta, okay, so because beta 1 doesn't cause bronchodilation, so once you see bronchodilation, the answer is going to be beta 2. For question 16, which of the following would be expected to cause salivation or urination? So these two functions are basically rest and digest. So it's going to be parasympathetic. So you can either inhibit the breakdown of ACH, or you increase the levels of ACH, or you activate muscarinic receptors. So the answer would be A, because inhibiting acetylcholinesterase increases the level of ACH within the synaptic gutter. So this results in salivation and urination. Okay, for 17, B is out, muscle relaxation does not occur. It's actually muscle contraction. The sarcomere strengthens, they pivot towards the M line. So D is the answer. Because when you have muscle contraction, you're going to pull the actin filaments towards towards itself, towards each other, towards the midline, so the M line. And lastly, last question for today. It's a rather tough question, also pretty cruel. Which of the following major brain regions supplies output to the preganglionic autonomic neurons within the intermediolateral horn of the spinal cord? So we're going to break this down. Intermediolateral horn here contains sympathetic fibers. So essentially what they're asking is, which major brain region supplies the major sympathetic outflow to the spinal cord? And the answer is E, the rostral ventrolateral medulla. This, by the way, is a past year question. So Monash actually tested this. I thought it was pretty cool, but it is what it is. I think a lot of people would have chosen hypothalamus because they think the hypothalamus is a major integrating center of the autonomic nervous system, which they're not wrong. But the hypothalamus is not the most direct, nor does it supply output to the sympathetic nervous system. Rather, it's the rostral ventrolateral medulla. You can check out my slides for that. And with that, that's the end. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on Facebook. Otherwise, yeah.
Hello. Would you be able to put the answers somewhere so when we go through the questions again, we'll be able to see them?
Right. Okay. I'll upload a post-lecture slide later on. Thanks. Otherwise,
Thanks, Will.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Thanks everyone for coming as well. I'll chuck up the recording later tonight. And we'll catch everyone again tomorrow. And again, huge thanks to Will. That was a great presentation. Yeah, we'll see you all tomorrow.